This is the blind leading the blind.
So, welcome everybody to the course on the Buddhist path of awakening. Let's start by bowing in. I always find it a little bit of a wake up to bow in. So we're working our way through the profound treasury of the ocean of Dharma by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. This is based primarily, but not exclusively, as we have found, on talks that he gave at seminary for about 15 years. Every year he would take a group of students numbering from 150 to 250 away for 3 months of a retreat involving practice sessions and study sessions. And during the study sessions in the evenings, he would lecture. During the days, his more advanced students would teach. And these talks that were accumulated over 15 years were digested into 3 volumes called The Profound Treasury of the Ocean of Dharma, which the title is actually a pun. On the one hand, it just means the profound treasury of the ocean of Dharma. On the other hand, it's his name. His name was Chogyam, meant ocean of Dharma. Chökyi Gyaltso is an abbreviation. And so it's the profound treasury of Chogyam Trungpa. And we have completed the first volume, and we are on the second, called The Buddhist Path of Wisdom and Compassion, which is basically on the Mahayana teachings, the middle stage of the path. And we are up to chapter 21 tonight, which is titled Realizing the Emptiness of Ordinary Reality. Michael is going to lead off and do the honors. So Michael, if you would take it away.
Okay. Welcome also, everyone. Begin talking about this chapter titled Realizing the Emptiness of Ordinary Reality. Just as a little bit of review, what we talked about last week, the notion of emptiness here is talking about the lack of inherent reality or inherent identity in phenomena. As an example, and we have, I think, fairly ordinary examples actually in our life of this. For instance, I have a $5 bill in my pocket. I believe that it has a certain value. And other people do too. I can exchange it for things. But if I were to go to a foreign country, maybe not Canada, but farther away, people would not be interested or willing to take my $5 bill at all. It has a relative value under certain causes, in the face of certain causes and conditions. But when those causes and conditions change, such as, and I've had this experience in other countries, it's essentially has no value at all. So the value isn't inherent in the $5 bill itself or any. It's attributed by people and is relative to certain causes and conditions that when they change, the value ceases to exist. So that it's not inherent in the $5 bill itself. At the same time, ultimate truth does not mean that relative truth doesn't exist. Under certain conditions, it does have value. So I think reflects something that I tried to say a couple of weeks ago, that one of the problems with conceptual mind is that conceptual mind tends to think in categories, that something either is something or isn't something, and has a great deal of trouble managing a notion of appearance, emptiness, ultimate truth, relative truth, where again, the conditions under which something is assigned value or whatever really depend on a lot of other causes and conditions are not inherent in the thing itself. So basically, this chapter begins with ground Madhyamaka, where Trungpa Rinpoche says the study of Madhyamaka begins with ground Madhyamaka, which has to do with our basic approach to reality. Based on the understanding of the two truths, the absolute and the relative, in ground Madhyamaka, he says, there's not any particular leap into the realization of shunyata. It's more a matter of realizing logically and dialectically that what you are doing is useless and senseless. So in working with Madhyamaka logic, as we talked about last week, what we end up with is some recognition of the emptiness of things. The lack of inherent substance, the lack of inherent identity in the self and in objects of the world, which also we talked about in a different way as twofold egolessness. So there's a sense working with Madhyamaka as a practice that it causes us to let go. It causes us to come to realize the absurdity, you could say, of the way in which we cling to things as real. And it helps us to let go of fixations and reach a perspective of non-conceptuality and clarity of just pure isness of things. Trungpa Rinpoche goes on to say that in path Madhyamaka, there could be lots of leaps. And he refers to these in terms of the 6 paramitas, which we'll study in detail later in this text. But the paramitas of generosity, discipline, patience, exertion, meditation, and prajna. And this relates to experience of emptiness or shunyata in the sense that as we give up clinging, for instance, as one example, it's easier to express generosity, to act in a generous way. And more particularly, if we go back to one of the previous chapters on, I think it was titled Basic Goodness, he talks about threefold purity on page 93, that when we act on the basis of egolessness or shunyata, that there's no actor, no action, no one acted on. He said that there's no territory, no possessiveness, because we've let go. We've let go of fixation. We've let go of a sense of territory. And he actually says sometimes the threefold purity in terms of generosity is expressed more specifically as no giver, no gift, and no recipient, so that there's not a sense of solidity to our action, to ourselves, or to the whoever we're expressing generosity to. And he goes on to say that throughout the Mahayana, all practices are based on threefold purity. Therefore, actions come only from warmth and openness. So in this way, the recognition of emptiness, the letting go of fixation, the openness of shunyata is what allows for paramita practice. And that's how it's expressed as path. At least that's my take on it. He goes on to say that ground Madhyamaka is based on a contemplative approach. As we looked at last week with the various questions and the way that Madhyamaka logic reduces things to absurdity, that there's a type of contemplation that we go through in order to look at our belief in the apparent reality of things. And as he says, the question is, how much can you hang on to this reality? And he says it's already rotting and it doesn't make any sense. So it's about time to come to your senses. So that's what comes out of the practice of ground Madhyamaka, this contemplative approach. It allows us to let go of fixations, let go of concepts, let go of any type of clinging. And the idea is that when you realize the concept of shunyata, when you actually experience it, then what you are already involved in, your ideas, concepts, theories, and philosophy does not hold up. So it's through this contemplative practice and through looking at our experience in a meditative way that we're able to let go. And he says this, in Buddhism, we have practice first and then study. Buddhism is less likely to impose a philosophy on you than other traditions because Buddhists are practitioners. So that this contemplative practice isn't based on pure conceptuality, but is actually working with our actual experience and dealing with things in terms of our mind of the moment and being able to look with more accuracy and sharpen our prajna so that we understand things more clearly. The next section of this chapter begins talking about Kunzup as one gigantic world of incest. And basically, he says here that there are two levels of perceiving shunyata: superficial prajna and transcendental prajna perception. And traditionally, these two levels are known as relative and ultimate truth. So the relative, he says that relative in regard to relative truth is a convenient English translation of kunza, but actually in the Tibetan, kun means all and zup means outfit. So the meaning of the Tibetan term is more like an outfit that fits everything. It has a quality of superficiality, like ketchup, which goes with any kind of food. And sometimes I've heard kunzup translated as all clothed or all covered, and that this is the Tibetan word for relative truth, that our perception of the world, at least in a conventional habitual sense, is one of relative truth. He says kunzup is the phenomenal world, which is an outfit, a self-existing show. The phenomenal world is a performance, living theater. He says, as the perceiver, you would like to see things in your own way, in a certain fashion. So you could be the audience or you could be the show. So it depends again on point of view and having some understanding of the relative nature of things. The idea of kunzup implies that different people would have different perspectives on the world. When we try to discuss reality, we have disagreements. Every one of us has a different attitude, and he gives the example of different attitude or different way of perceiving water. That in the six realms, the perceptions of people in the various realms have been programmed. And these perceptions have slowly degenerated into different forms of neurosis or psychosis. He says that beings in the hell realm, for instance, might see water as melted iron, that people in the God realm might see it as the elixir of life. Humans would see it as something to drink. A different example that's sometimes given again of the relative, and again, this gets into the relative nature of perception, is the dung beetle. So dung to us would be something that would be disgusting and repulsive, but to a dung beetle, dung is delightful and attractive and appealing. So that, again, this gets to the fact that things don't have their inherent nature, but are projected onto them, which we'll talk about in a moment. And that because of the nature of kunzup, this all-clothed relative truth quality, that people do have different perspectives of the world, and different beings have different perspectives of the world. He says that some people's visions or concepts might be more accurate, and other people's approaches might be very gross and wrong. We can make that judgment, that division between neurosis and psychosis, but that whole approach is questionable. With kunzup, the distinction between unreasonable and reasonable logic begins to break down into a series of expectations and preconceptions. I just noticed that I typed reasonable wrong as treasonable, which is interesting given some of the different political perspectives we have nowadays. But anyway, kunzup, he says, kunzup is a show off, a bluff. There is not substance, but there's still a lot of things going on. Again, the nature of ultimate truth doesn't mean that relative truth is completely false, or it doesn't have a validity, at least in relative terms. However, kunzup, this is what he says, kunzup should not be looked down upon. In fact, we have a lot of problems realizing kunzup and relating with the world. The dressed up world is actually very hard to work with. We need to transcend neurosis and psychosis and become sane through our relationship with a spiritual friend. And then when you've experienced twofold egolessness, in other words, when we're able to let go of our preconceptions, our fixations, our confusion, and our ignorance, you see that the real world is actually the real world. Then he says that kunzup, the ordinary and popular world's truth, it's said to be empty of itself and by itself. Kunzup is empty of its own nature. It is based on constantly filling gaps of all kinds. That kunzup is known as relative truth because it isn't absolute. Not only that, but it's known as relative truth because it has its own relatives. It says that relative truth is self-perpetuating. And again, this is again pointing to how the nature of relative truth depends on causes and conditions that make things appear, give things a relative reality, but not an absolute reality. It reminded me of the story of somebody being told that the earth rests on a giant turtle. Well, what does the turtle rest on? That turtle rests on a turtle. And anyway, it finally comes down, this turtle's all the way down. And it's sort of the same idea here, that relative truth is completely interwoven with itself. It completely, things lean on each other in a way to establish their existence. And again, it gives it a relative reality, but in absolute truth, there's nothing fixed, nothing inherent in things. He says it has intercourse with itself and produces its own child and eats it, that it's one gigantic world of incest. That's why we're in trouble. We keep having to return to our own selves, the Kunzup world of incest in which things keep reproducing, and there's no way out and no way in. The next section kind of goes a little more into the nature of Kunzup in a deeper way. He said this section was entitled Self-Perpetuating Mental Pigeonholing. And he says to understand Kunzup or relative truth, he decided to borrow from the Yogacara or mind-only tradition. And this is what I've read before, is that the Madhyamaka approach is very skillful at getting at, or at least knocking down the underpinnings that get in the way of having some idea of ultimate truth, but that Madhyamaka doesn't say a whole lot about relative truth. What I've been told is that in classes that I've taken is that Madhyamaka just says about relative truth that it is what beings say it is. And that in a sense, you could say that on a relative level, beings come to a decision about what's relatively true by, in a sense, voting. So for instance, to continue with monetary examples, we're in the middle of, it seems, a big vote under to what degree Bitcoin has value. And it's not that it has value in itself, but the value gets decided by how people decide. And that's as much as about this Madhyamaka says about relative truth. In fact, Yogacara says a whole lot more. The Yogacara school is mainly attributed to Asanga and Vasubandhu, who were two scholar practitioners who lived in the 4th century. And just to give you a sense of why Yogacara is called mind only, it's associated with mind only. As Trungpa Rinpoche says, according to Yogacara, Kunzup is actually your state of mind. Yogacharans say that the relative world is made out of your mind. And so this is just a little excerpt from Wikipedia that I cut and pasted. With Yogacara, he says that a deceptive trick is built into the way consciousness operates at every moment. Consciousness projects and constructs a cognitive object in such a way that it disowns its own creation, pretending the object is out there, in order to render that object capable of being appropriated. Even what we cognize is occurring within our active cognition. We cognize it as if it were external to our consciousness. Consciousness engages in this deceptive game of projection, dissociation, and appropriation because there is no self. So what Yogacara is saying is that whatever we experience, we can only experience through our mind. Every sight, sound, smell, taste, mental object, feeling is all the creation of our mind. You've seen the movie The Matrix with its idea that beings in that movie lived in a computer-generated world. It's sort of something like that, except that it's our mind that generates the world that we see. And then having projected a world out there, we take that world as being separate from us. We dissociate from the fact that we've actually created this world, and then use that to solidify a sense of self. So that's essentially, in a kind of very somewhat simplified way, the idea of mind only. and how Yogacara goes about creating the world around us. So this Kunzup world, the sense of being all covered, all clothed, is the world that mind projects, the world that our mind projects as being something external to us. And if we reflect even just a little bit on it, we know that even Western science says that, for instance, with our perception, visual perception, that light rays come in through the eyes are processed in the brain, but we don't experience it as an internal process. We see it as an external process. And through this, we create a sense of an external world. And that's what it meant when it says that whatever we experience is essentially a creation of mind. So he says, he says, because of this Kunzup world, because of this way that mind creates the world that we perceive and then tend to believe in a solid way, if we're not able to analyze or think about it a little bit, that when you see something for the first time, you know how to react to it immediately. And he says, why? And what it comes down to is you still know how to handle new situations. You know how to relate with new food, new tastes, new visions, new sounds, new concepts, and new ideas. You automatically put them into preconceived pigeonholes. You do that all the time. Such preconceptions are always there. And he goes on to say, so when you see something new, it's not really new because you already have expectations about it. Because the world that we perceive is a creation of mind, it's affected by our habitual patterns, our tendencies, our preconceptions, our expectations. And for that reason, that whatever we see, when he says, so whenever you see something new, it's not really new because you already have expectations about it. I think this is another way of talking about the Kunzup as incest that he was talking about before. And just as a contrast to that, to think about what we do in meditation practice, again, this idea of nothing new. We think about the lines in the lineage chant that say, awareness is the body of meditation as is taught. Whatever arises is fresh, the essence of realization. To this meditator who rests simply without altering it, grant your blessing so that my mind is free from conception. Then things are fresh, things are new, because we're able to relax into our experience of awareness and begin to let go of preconception and expectation. But that's a little bit of an aside. I just wanted to point that out. Anyway, he goes on to say that our basic assumptions he gives examples of sizes, colors, shapes, movements, are already in your mind. Your mind is already programmed. Therefore, you know how to act and how to relate to things. Everything is recorded in your brain system. The way that yoga, just as a very brief description, the way that the Yogacara system explains this is through the nature of the 8 consciousnesses, which I'm pretty sure we've talked about before. The first 5 are the consciousness associated with the senses: eye conscious, ear, nose, tongue, and body. And the 6th consciousness is the mental consciousness, the consciousness that perceives mental events. The 7th is sometimes called the afflicted consciousness. It's the consciousness that essentially creates a sense of self, perceives a sense of self. And then the 8th consciousness is the storehouse consciousness. And it's said that in the storehouse consciousness are karmic seeds, all the propensities and habitual tendencies that we've accumulated through lifetimes are in the storehouse consciousness. And it's when he's talking about our mind being programmed and that we have these preconceptions and so on, what he's talking about from a Yogacara point of view is the ripening of these karmic seeds in the storehouse consciousness that then get expressed through the other consciousnesses. So why are the things anyway, to get back to his talk, why are the things we see perpetuating themselves? Aren't new things happening all the time, every day? And he says, according to the Yogacara tradition, that's not true. If we look at the Kunzup aspect of reality as it is, we realize that Kunzup is a manifestation of our incest. The whole thing is constantly inbreeding. We manage to put everything into our own mental preconceptions and pigeonholes all the time. So this is what we do when we relate to things in terms of habitual mind, conventional mind, is that we are always putting things, as he says, into our expectations, mental preconceptions, and pigeonholes of various types all the time. And in this way, our experience of the world becomes all clothed, all covered. It's very similar to what we experience in a dream, where in a dream we experience an entire world. And this is one reason why, in fact, our daily experience is sometimes compared quite directly to the dream experience, in that we live in a dream that seems real, but that is actually a projection or a creation of mind, which is, I think, one of the most powerful insights in the Yogacara. So with that, I will stop and let John take over.
Thank you, Michael. There's so much in this chapter, and it implies so much. It relies on so much background. Just a couple of points. The whole middle stage of the path, the Mahayana, there are two fundamental schools, you might say, of thought that dominated the Mahayana, and we are now dealing with both of them. The Madhyamaka, which has to do primarily with the doctrine of shunyata, emptiness, and the inherent reality of what we, inherent unreality of what we take to be real. And there's a definition for what real is and what the unreality is, which we've gone over before. That things have no true existence, that everything is a constant arising and passing away in this present moment, without any fundamental ongoing being. There's a continuity in the change, and yet nothing endures, nothing inheres. And this is the fundamental teaching of Madhyamaka, of the doctrine of shunyata. You might say that the Heart Sutra, which I think we're going to go through in a week, we're going to take a break from the Profound Treasury and actually study the Heart Sutra. But the Heart Sutra is the fundamental statement of shunyata, which has to do with the lack of inherent being or reality in all phenomena that we take so readily to be real and have true being. And that this is an entrance really into another world. The second school that dominated the Mahayana was the school that Michael has been talking about, the Yogacara school, sometimes called the Chittamatra school. Yogacara has to do with union. Chittamatra means mind only. And actually there were slight differences. There were two different movements that took place, but yet there was a lot of overlap. And Chittamatra is often applied to the Yogacara school as being the mind-only school. And what it said was that everything is fundamentally mind. Now, that there are two aspects, two main points that the Yogacharans were making, and then a lot of subsidiary ones as well. They made some tremendous contributions. But the two main points were that while everything truly is non-existent, the one thing that does exist is mind. This was later refuted by the Madhyamakans, and it was rejected as a concept by later Buddhists, the Tantric Buddhists of Tibet, although the language is still maintained in an interesting paradox. So the other contribution, though, besides the contribution that mind, as Michael explained, is the fundamental basis of everything, because everything arises in mind, is colored by mind, and mind is inseparable from the phenomena which it perceives. The other main contribution had to do with relative truth. The idea that everything is mind is the Yogacaran version of the absolute truth, that things have no inherent existence because they're all just part of mind. They're just constant arisings and passing away in mind. But then the relative truth, that while they have no true existence, nonetheless, things appear. This image that you're looking at on your computer screen, the sensation of your bottom on the chair, these words that you're listening to, the smell of dinner cooking in the kitchen or whatever it might be. All of these things arise and pass away. And this is what is meant by relative truth. And they made a tremendous contribution, which Trungpa Rinpoche said he appreciates, in defining and articulating what relative truth is. As Michael said, relative truth is kunzup. It means the outfit for everything. The idea is simply this, that the absolute truth is that things have no true existence. They are a constant arising and passing away in the moment. And by true existence, there's a technical term for that. It says own being, and it has three main qualities which are denied. One is that things are ongoing as they are, without change, for some period of time. And what Buddhism says is nothing is ongoing. Everything is changing all the time. For as soon as it appears, it's already changing. You can't even find what it was that changed. It changed so completely. It's just a constant appearing. The second quality is that things exist independently. And again, Buddhism says nothing exists independently. Look at this computer screen. Everything is in constant interdependence with everything else. You can't see this image of me without seeing the background and the space around and all of it. The hair on this face, the color of the sweater, all of it is existing interdependently. So nothing exists independently. Everything arises in interdependence on tons of other stuff. And the third quality is that things are unitary. Nothing is unitary. Everything is made up of parts, the glasses, the nose, the whiskers, whatever it may be. Everything that we experience is parts. So there is no ongoing thing, which we all think of as that, yeah, there's the ongoing thing. There's my glass here, it's ongoing, I'm ongoing, whatever it might be, my desk. And what Buddhism is saying is no, all of that is just an idea. That is absolute truth. And that is affirmed by the Madhyamikans and interpreted by the Yogacarans in a way that was later rejected. The Yogacarans interpreted everything as being fundamentally mind. And the doctrine was mind only, chitta matra. But later Buddhists said, no, that's not true. Because mind itself is just another false idea. It doesn't actually exist. It has no true being. Now, the second quality, though, is what Trungpa Rinpoche appreciated, is their presentation of the relative truth. So the idea is that, as the Madhyamikans would say, while nothing has any true existence, true being, no svabhava, nonetheless, there is this constant arising and passing of appearance. This gesture, these words, this feeling of my bottom on the chair now that I notice it, all of these things and more are constantly arising and passing away. This is the arising and passing away of the phenomenal world. And while it has no existence, no svabhava, no true being whatsoever, it's just a constant shimera, a constant display. Nonetheless, the display is there and it's constantly changing. So, that slogan that I've quoted before from the Tantra, things appear and yet they don't exist. They don't exist and yet they appear. This is the two truths. The fact that they don't exist is the ultimate truth, and yet they appear is the relative truth. And yet they appear, and yet they have no true existence. That's the relative truth and the ultimate truth. They're in complete union. Now, what the Yogacaran said about the relative truth, which is what we're talking a lot about here, is that it had three levels. The first level, I sent out this little notation to you all. The first level, well, let's take the middle level first, which is called Paratantra. What that's referring to is that these things appear. This sweater, this beard, these glasses, I'm looking at my own image on the computer screen. I'm looking at the computer screen, it appears. Now that I notice it, it appears in the moment. Now I'm looking away and it's not there. Now I'm looking here and it is. So these things appear. And this is true, relative truth. There are appearances that arise and pass, and they are the six knowables, as Michael said: sights, sounds, smells, tastes, bodily sensations, and mental events. All of these things arise and pass away in the moment, and they are true, relative truth. And this is called Paratantra. It's actually that life is made up of these things, but we lay trips on them, to use the old 60s expression. We lay judgments, interpretations, expectations of all kinds, conceptual overlays. And we say, oh, I like the look of that person, and I don't like the look of this other person. Ooh, I like the taste of that dinner, but I didn't like the taste of the other dinner. And we have all these qualifications. This is sour, this is sweet. And we go through our lives with these expectations and judgments arising within us. This is what what Michael was talking about when he talked about the alaya. The alaya is that we have stored all these likes, dislikes, expectations, judgments, goods and bads, names. We have stored them in our memory bank, you might call it. This is called the alaya. Alaya is translated as storehouse. It's where all of these things are stored. So I'll give you the example that I've always made up. I ought to come up with a new one. A child and his mother are walking down the street. She is not noticing, and there's a dog, and the child, say it's a toddler, goes up to the dog out of curiosity, and the dog bites the child. Big trauma. The mother, immediately rescues the child and calms the child down. Days, weeks, months go by. The memory of that trauma is stored in the child's memory bank, but the child isn't thinking about it anymore. It's gotten over it. And then one day they're walking down the street again, and the mother is absorbed, and the child sees a dog in the distance. Immediately, the memory of the previous incident, the trauma, arises, and the child is frightened. There's a dog. Last time it saw a dog, the dog bit it, and caused it pain and aggression. And now the child is frightened. The mother sees what's going on, goes up to the owner of the dog, finds out the dog's a friendly dog, brokers a meeting between the child and the dog. The child, with some trepidation, makes a relationship with the dog, finds out that this dog is friendly, jumps up, licks its face, wags its tail. And now the child knows not all dogs bite. This dog is a friendly dog, and that memory is stored in the child's memory bank, the alaya. So the next time, the third time the child meets a dog, it's going to have both possibilities arise out of its memory. This is the way in which we go through life, experiencing the relative world of dogs, streets, mothers, whatever, through the interpretation of things that are stored in our memory, things that we have learned, which we bring to bear all the time as we move through this world. In fact, the world that we move through is to a large degree determined by all those things that are stored. We choose, I'm going to go to town and I'm going to go to that little store I like. We're creating the world out of our memory. We're going to that particular store because we've got a good memory of it, or whatever it may be. So this is the combination of two levels now of relative truth. On the one hand, there is the phenomena of the dog, which is just a dog is a dog is a dog, whatever it is. And then on the second level, there's our interpretation that we lay on that dog. Is this dog friendly? Is this dog aggressive? These two levels are called, the first level of a dog is a dog is called paratantra. It's pure relative truth. It has no overlay. The second lay is called parikalpita, and it's actually the lowest level. And what that means is it's defiled awareness of the phenomenal world, of the dog, because we've got this interpretation, this overlay on it, which might be true and might be false. The second time the child saw a dog and laid the overlay of the first time on it and saw it as being frightening, aggressive, it wasn't true. We do this all the time. Not only do we lay these trips on these interpretations on the phenomena, but we actually choose our worlds based on these stored predilections and learnings that we've got in us. So I don't speak Spanish, and I don't go seeking relationships with Spanish speaking people who have come to this country as much as I might if I did speak Spanish. It's just a predilection or a inherent direction that's built into me, and we've all got gazillions of them. Those predilections that define the world we live in are called parikalpita, and they are the true, when he talks about relative truth being incestuous, eating itself, that's what he's talking about, is the way in which we distort the world, interpret the world for better or for worse with our conceptual and emotional overlays. And the world that we do that to, this world of relative truth, is paratantra. It's pure in itself, but then we lay our conceptual emotional trips on top of it, and it becomes impure. The third level is that once we begin to see through the practice of meditation, the world of paratantra, the world stripped of our interpretations, this pure world of phenomena as it arises, then beyond that, we begin to realize that it doesn't have any true existence of its own. It's just a constant arising and passing in the moment, a constant display, a presentation. And that level is the level of shunyata. And that is what the Yogacharans called parinishpana. And that is where we start to transition into Madhyamaka and to Shunyata doctrine, because the Madhyamikans did it better than the Yogacharans. The Yogacharans concretized it, and the Madhyamikans didn't. So really what, let me see where we are here. Yeah, he says, ordinary people possessing twofold ego, that means they're completely wrapped up in their belief in I and other, and they're being driven to a greater or lesser extent by these stored memories and predilections that are stored in the alaya and that come to life all the time. He says, ordinary people possessing twofold ego, people in the street, are all wrapped up in their thoughts, memories, dreams, fantasies, judgments. So they can't see the impermanence and the vividness. Their vision is distorted. We walk along seeing the world as though through sunglasses, the sunglasses of these preconceptions, judgments, predilections, memories of the past, all of these things that we are seeing the world through. And so two people can be standing right next to each other, and one person sees the world as being ABC, and the next person, the person standing next to him or her, sees it as being DEF, because they are noticing different things based on their trainings and predilections. We create our worlds constantly by seeing them through these lenses. He says, He's talking about the level of true kunzup. That is seeing the world stripped of these interpretations. He says, nobody sees this level of true kunzup without having cut through the twofold ego, because there is still attachment. There are always psychological implications behind the colors, forms, noises, and physical sensations they perceive. You see a particular car, it's got a particular color, it arouses a particular feeling in you, and it doesn't arouse the same feeling in the person standing next to you. So we're constantly seeing the world through colored lenses. True kunzup, when you begin to see the world stripped of all of this, is very difficult to experience, he says, although it is very ordinary. Very ordinary. But once you have attained the second level of pure kunzup, that's what's called paratantra, it is no longer possible to relapse to the first level of kunzup. Once a person has experienced smallpox, they never have a recurrence. This is what our practice of meditation, especially meditation in action, meditation walking down the street, is meant to bring. When we practice awareness practice, we are beginning to let go or see through or see our preconceptions, our predilections, our trips. And when you see them, then you begin to become free of them and begin to see the world as it truly is, or close to, stripped of these. And he says, and once you begin to do that, it is no longer possible to relapse to the first level of kunzup, because you begin to become aware of your own prejudices and preconceptions and predilections. Once a person has experienced smallpox, they never have a recurrence. We're beginning to wake up. And this is an expression of prajna. This is what allows this to happen. Prajna is the clear, seeing intelligence that cuts through our preconceptions and predilections and allows us to begin to experience this world clearly. And this world seen this way has a vividness to it that can be very surprising. This vividness, very heartwarming, very moving. And people and the sentient beings, people, animals, become much more, one develops affection for them because one's heart begins to open to the beauty and the freedom from our own constraints, our own prejudices, opens our heart, and we begin to experience love. So he talks about the shamatha possibility of kunzup, of relative truth. This is like when we practice shamatha, that things present themselves colorfully, but without any personal emotional attachment. We're not frightened, we're not in love with, we're not trying to possess something, and yet it can move us with its beauty. Although it presents colorfully, vividly, there is no attachment to the phenomenal world in this view of this approach to kunzup. He says, this lack of attachment brings harmony and gentleness. At the vipassana level of awareness, we begin to see things as illusion. What's illusion is this meaningfulness that we attributed to things all the time. We have such strong prejudices. They can really be powerful. Confessing my own, I met someone recently, I think I've told you this, who is violently opposed to vaccination. I was reading today about the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, who is a very profound anti-vaxxer. It arouses anger in me. That's my predilection. That's my prejudice. That's my bias. And the freedom from that would make me so much more intelligent, more open, compassionate as a human being, and better able to deal with the world. And this is the Vipassana experience. We begin to see that all of this is a constant and changing presentation. He calls it an illusion. The illusion is that these things actually mean something and have inherent true existence. That's the illusion, when they're just a constant presenting. He says, you are seeing things as a self-existing game that does not apply individually or personally to you or others. It's just a constant arising presentation. Things are not that good or bad or entertaining or boring. Things are seen as they are on a very basic, fundamental level. What freedom there is in this, and affection. And then he talks about how you can experience shunyata, this freedom from belief. It comes up as in contrast. Once you begin to be introduced to it intellectually, experientially, in your meditation practice, in relationship to the lineage and teachers, that once that connection begins to be made, he says, then when you have powerful emotional threats and extreme messages of all kinds being presented to you, like meeting someone who disagrees with you violently on a matter that you care about, as extreme as such events become, that is how much shunyata could be experienced. Because when we recognize it, our prejudice, and let it go, that contrast is there so powerfully. It can be. He says, because you have fixated so very powerfully on one thing or another, and then somebody comes along and takes that thing away from you, that tends to bring about some kind of flash between two contrasting situations. You have a violent prejudice against somebody, and then they commit an act of kindness for you, confounding your expectation. It opens your mind, shocks you. There's a moment of openness. And in that moment, he says, you feel that you have lost, maybe lost your prejudice, lost your ground. But at the same time, you feel that you have gained simultaneously. At that point, you can no longer tell the difference, because there is an intelligence that experiences the departing situation and the coming situation as one experience. And he says, and you finally begin to fall in love with sentient beings, because your mind is opening, you're beginning to let go of your own prejudices that we've been laying since time immemorial on this world around us, doing it of violence. I like this, I don't like that. This is better, that's worse. This person is a good person, that person is not. All those things are beginning to go. And it takes tremendous courage, because we're giving up self-protection for all the things that we think are fearful and threatening. And it takes tremendous awareness. We have to be aware of who and what we're doing, who we are and what we're doing. And it takes discipline. We have to begin to meet our own minds, which is what we're doing in sitting meditation all the time. So he's been painting this picture of the world of relative and ultimate truth. The relative truth is the arising of the phenomenal world with all of its differences and phenomena, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mental events. And it exists in two different modalities, pure and impure. Pure is as it is, impure is with our learned prejudices laid on top of it. And all of it has no true existence the way we thought it did. It's a constant arising and passing. And we are floating in the middle of it, heading towards death. I found out today that another old friend of mine died. It's really interesting. Oh, God. And yet, there's nothing that is born and dies. It's just a constant arising and passing in this present moment. So we're really proceeding here individually and collectively towards deathlessness, which doesn't mean immortality either. Just another idea. So I'll stop there and we can have a discussion for a while before we end. Fred, you came in late. I'm going to let some other people go first, okay? I want you to pick up. Danielle.
Hi. My question is just wondering, it says, human beings are unable to experience Shunyata as the enlightened ones experienced it a long time ago. The enlightened ones just experienced it on the spot, but we can experience Shunyata only by contrast. And I didn't understand why they could experience it on the spot and now we can't.
I'm not sure. Michael, do you have an idea? You're muted, Michael.
What page is that on?
It's the last sentence on page 156 and it goes into 157. Probably because we got so much more distractions, maybe. TV, Netflix, Disney.
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
not
know.
sure.
I wish we could ask him.
I wish we could. Maybe we should go back and look at the text and transcript from which it's taken. There's always the issue of the editor.
Yes, there is.
Because that one just doesn't make
Could I
sense to me. Yes,
could I put in 2 cents here? Yeah,
Laura, is that you talking? Who's speaking?
it's Laura. Yeah, sorry, I'm on an iPhone.
Okay.
It's Laura.
Okay. Hi.
Yeah. Hi. I thought he was putting that in context, like the Heart Sutra. When people first heard it, it was shocking, and that they could use that shock to be awoken. But now it's the words are so traditional, we can't have that same effect from it. So there's a different path, which is the one that you guys were very eloquently describing, and Michael's describing, of noticing the contrast.
That makes sense. We're not as naive as unknowledgeable.
That the words have become, that the words woken aren't fresh to us because we've heard them so much. They're part of our, the Heart Sutra, and we chant them, and
Definitely makes sense.
I'm not sure, because there's so many stories. For instance, Tilopa and Naropa. Naropa follows Tilopa for 12 years, undergoing terrible hardships. And finally, one day, Tilopa takes off his sandal and slaps him in the face with it, and presto, he wakes up. That's the moment of awakening. Big shock. He gets slapped in the face with the sandal. There's so many stories like that. Not
So
sure.
are you saying, John, why can't we be slapped with sandals in the face? Why, like that wouldn't work now?
I think we can.
Uh-huh.
I think we can, and it happens. I do. Definitely. Although it may not have to be that. It can be verbal, it can be the relationship, between people. There's the story
Is
of
it
Patrul Rinpoche and his attendant, who became a great teacher, who had attended to him for 18 years. And one night, Patrul Rinpoche is lying out under the stars, and he's looking up at the stars, and he calls over to his attendant, who's standing, somewhat far away, waiting to see if his master needs anything. And he says, I forget the guy's name, whatever it was. He says, have you received pointing out from me? And the fellow says, no. And he says, well, do you see the stars in the sky? The guy looks up and he says, yes. And Patrul Rinpoche says, and do you hear the dogs barking over at the monastery, some miles away? And the fellow says, yes. And Patrul Rinpoche says, that's it. And the guy's got it. It's nonsensical. It has to do with how the person's state of mind and the relationship with the teacher at that particular moment. And it can be violent, like Tilopa and Naropa, and it can be gentle, like Patrul Rinpoche and his attendant. So I agree with Michael.
I think maybe the chapter puts it in the context of being awoken from contemplation of like the words of the Heart Sutra, that the awakening from an intellectual understanding, something like that.
So you mean into a true awakening from a partial intellectual understanding? Is that what you're saying?
Well, from a contemplation of the words of like the Heart Sutra.
Into a true experiential understanding?
Yeah. That we were just talking about generalizing it, like in terms of you can't come to enlightenment except by contrast. They were making that bigger, but I'm thinking the context of it was in contemplation of these concepts, that it doesn't have the same impact on us as it did previously. Like it's a narrower focus. Anyway, I'll just stop there.
Okay. Who else? Jane. You're muted, Jane.
This really is a remark about Michael's analogy to that we make up our own reality to Bitcoin, because conceptually it's perfect in terms of something that really never exists and doesn't exist, and yet people are either making or losing millions of dollars, etc. And then taking it a step further, these NFTs and the other, non-fungible things that do not exist, but cost $66 million to own. And it's bringing what's what we're reading about to an absolute, first of all, into our time today, and even this Facebook becoming metaverse, creating purposefully creating an alternate reality, and then we all move into that, and that becomes how we live. So I think these concepts are very current at the moment of what's going on in the world today, and leading to so much divisiveness and so much anxiety, because it's like all of a sudden the rug's been pulled out from under us, and it goes back to the last chapter we read about nihilism and what was the other one?
Eternalism.
Eternalism, right? Exactly. So that connection to Bitcoin really resonated with me, helped me unpack this, because it's extraordinarily complex. It's really difficult. I mean, it's a struggle to really get to it. And I think one just has to, as I said earlier today to Laura, one just has to sit. Thank you, all of you. Very helpful.
Thank you.
That was one thing that Trungpa Rinpoche said once about Buddhism: 2,500 years old and always up to date.
Right, right.
I guess 2,600 years old now.
Right, I was thinking that. That's another interpretation. Meg had her hand up.
Yeah, I just wondered your opinion. It seems that the Nagarjuna goes to such great extent to deconstruct our reality and maybe put it back together at some point, but to really, so we sort of detach from any sense of reality or sense of self that we have. And is it purely so that we can become more compassionate people?
Is it,
And possibly, I said, is it purely so that we can become more compassionate people? Is it also like to deconstruct our egos? I mean, what is the purpose of deconstructing our sense of reality?
I think to let go, and therefore to be more flexible, but also more available. I think that it can be misunderstood and misapplied sometimes, so that it does come, that people experience it as a sense of detachment or indifference, but that's not not where it's supposed to go. I think that that's, what happens when it's approached as too much of a project. It helped, I think, maybe to go back and, to some of the earlier chapters where we talked about, basic goodness and Buddha nature being inherent in us. And ultimately what we're trying to do is recognize that and cultivate that and just express that more fully. So it's not exactly detachment, but it is letting go. But it's not rejecting, and it's not hiding from in any way. I think it's seeing through, or seeing the illusory nature of things. The analogy sometimes for false perception in Buddhism is seeing the rope as a snake. But the rope never was a snake. It's in our mind, and when we let go of the illusion, when we realize that it's just an illusion, then we just see it for what it is. We didn't make it anything different in the end. We made it something different in the beginning in a neurotic way, or maybe a psychotic way, but we're just seeing it as it is. And in the end, I think that's the purpose, is to let go of the things that get in the way of clear seeing and clear understanding.
and with the promise that in doing that, we become more intelligent about what the world is, and much more compassionate and much more skillful in relating to it. That what we're doing is we're getting rid of false preconceptions about the world, that these ideas of inherent existence are mistakes, and that we're freeing ourselves from them. And all of the prejudices that we have accumulated over the course of our lives, or many lives, and we're beginning to see things as they truly are, reality. That's the word that's being used. And in doing that, we enter the world of the Bodhisattva, which is a world of reality, clear seeing of reality, open-heartedness, compassion, and skill of helping other people and being devoted to helping other people, and that this is a truer world. That's the promise.
Thank you.
It's interesting that he said that the Heart Sutra is really ground Madhyamaka. It's at the level of intellectual understanding. It doesn't really get to the whole thing that the Yogacharans were talking about, which is the beauty of this world of phenomena as it arises and is seen clearly. Beauty and meaningfulness and vividness. The Heart Sutra is really just all about getting rid of that error of believing that things have true, ongoing, independent existence. It's an intellectual level. But it's really beautiful, isn't it, the Heart Sutra?
Mhm.
Yeah. Who else?
Fred asked his question.
No, Fred didn't. Fred, are you still here? Maybe not.
Mark, did you have something, Mark?
Not really. I was just thinking about just how the world we relate to, and what our truth is. And I understand on the ultimate level nothing exists, and I have a tendency to start thinking in nihilistic terms, and I have problems with people who, again, when it comes to things like women not having control over their own bodies, or people not being able to love who they love, and people who are so judgmental about these, trying to limit folks' abilities to make choices. And I get so taken in by this emotionally. It really, really bothers me. And I feel like if I was, ultimately just was so accepting of everything, that it would be like giving permission to others. And I know at the same time, this is kind of the world, that is a creation, there's ultimately, right, there's really not much. The world isn't as we see it, I believe. I think that it's very confusing. If we really think about it, I mean, we're living, I know I get crazy with these stupid little things, but like the universe is 10.8 billion years old, and we're like this little teeny tiny dot. And we're living in the moment with the universe. I just find that so incredible. And and what is our reality? What's it based on? And we're so tiny compared to the universe. Never mind, I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but it's very, there's just so much. And I don't want to, I want to be good to, try to reach out to people that need help. But at the same time, I feel like I want to also be, fight injustice, I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to shut up. as I meander here. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mark. Kurt, I see your brow furrowed.
No, I think what Mark just said just really does touch me in that same sense of allowing the world to be as it is and let go of it, and but at the same time seeing the injustice out there, and like you just spoke of how anti-vaxxers touches that place in you. I feel like I'm wandering through this world being thrown back and forth by these emotions, and I see how it comes back to wanting the world to be different than it is, and I don't know, it's hard for me to I guess I've got a wish and a desire and a vision of a beautiful world, and I think that's part why I'm meditating, because I'm wanting the world to be a better place, let alone myself, and that want is both a suffering, but it feels like it's also coming from a place of compassion, and it is confusing. And so what Mark said just really resonates.
Thank you.
I don't think there's anything in the Mahayana that says you have to accept injustice. It's more a question of developing the skillful means to deal with the situations in which it arises in the most compassionate way. So it's a challenge. It really is.
Yeah.
And at least what we're told, and I guess if I think about my experience, I guess it's probably true. It is true that when we're able to let go and not relate to things in terms of our preconceptions and habitual tendencies, we are more likely to do something skillful. And if we don't, we learn from it and do better the next time.
Cody, I think, has his hand up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, listening to Kurt and Mark here, one thing that popped into my head was this experience of kind of letting go of our concepts of what we're actually seeing, and stop seeing the relative world, this kind of fake relative world that we're seeing, and projecting. There seems to be no facts, like there aren't any facts anymore. I might see something as red, but someone else might see it as blue, and I can never actually know by saying I see it as red. The facts go away, and injustice actually happens because we think something is true. We think something is factual. My idea is correct. Kurt, and this gets into like, as I'm taking that other course on like hopelessness and crazy wisdom, it kind of gets into this kind of hopelessness, this kind of like, oh, I want to create the beautiful world. I want to create the beautiful world. And then, but we also have to like kind of let go of our ideas of beautiful world, because those are also this kind of hope of it. What is it? The hell is paved with good intentions or something like that. So there seems to be this experience of kind of letting go of facts and letting go of the idea of a beautiful world, letting go of that as well, and allowing the thing to emerge. Does that kind of see, is that kind of what I'm hearing here a little bit? Like, because I mean, where is factual? Where is a fact in this kind of mindset, in this kind of experience? It seems like it drops away as well. as soon as I say it is something, it's not that thing anymore. Nouns almost go away. Everything becomes a verb, an event.
That was kind of abstract for me, but like a second grader brought a loaded gun to school in this area apparently this week. It's not the first occurrence. It's happened in the past month, you know, and that kind of thing. And, you know, wanting a better world and being disappointed that, you know, this isn't what's happening when this is the world that we're getting that we would never think we were going to get, you know. That's very overwhelming, and I don't know how to put that in with what you said in an abstract. Your way was very abstract, and I know I'm coming with a concrete example, you know. So I just want to get off my chest, I guess, because I'm just, today I learned that fact, and I was like, this is not the first time in this area in this month that a loaded gun has happened to come to school, and it's just insane. Anyway, sorry.
I don't think,
Yeah.
I really don't think we're going to be able to create an ideal world. It's never been done, or at least not that I know of, at least not for the moment. But what we can do is see the world clearly and have an open heart and deal with it, each one of us, in a way that's compassionate and helpful and perhaps even skillful, and giving up our preconceptions, our prejudices, live a more intelligent and generous life. And I think that's what we're being asked really to do. And that's what the practice is about and what all these ideas are about. Is seeing the world more accurately, less reactively, less prejudicially, and with an open heart, and being able to help other people and ourselves move into a more compassionate and intelligent world. Really, that's what, I mean, the words prajna, you know, intelligence, compassion, and skillful means dominate these teachings.
We're getting close to time here.
We are. Yeah. So we should do the closing chant, dedicating the merit. Is that okay? I'm going to mute all. Shinyi, will you lead us?
Yes.
And we have discussion group tomorrow. Please come and we can continue.
By then, I might have found that reference that we were asked about.
Okay.
We'll close by dedicating the merit earned by our practice for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Shinyi, unmute yourself.
She was,
Mute yourself, Shini.
My God, I'm so sorry.
I heard her the first time.
Okay, I'll do it again. We'll close by dedicating the merit for the benefit of all sentient beings. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience, may defeat enemy wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the witness wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.
Beautiful. Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
All soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Night all.
Everyone. Good night.
Night, everyone.
There we go.
Thanks, Michael.
Oh, thank you.
That was great.
Always interesting. See
Challenging.
you tomorrow.
That one challenging
Yeah.
part. That,
What
where-
now?
that one part that I really didn't understand either.
That line that Christy asked about.
Yeah.
I'm going to see if I can find it.
Okay. I've got to go.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.